Good evening, I'm Adventure Argonaut. This is my TV Argospective or review or commentary, whatever, on the third season of Star Trek The Next Generation. It's been a while since I am planning to do all seven seasons of The Next Generation when I get around to it. Yeah, it's been a while since season two. Didn't check how long, is it been a month or more? But hey, I'm not gonna give up on these. Um, and everything seems to be working. Let's pop out kick chat, and then we're ready to go. So I will go through each of the episodes on season three of Star Trek: The Next Generation. So let's scroll down here. Season three. So the first episode is evolution, and it's when Wesley's science experiment goes haywire and almost kills everybody. It's like so yeah, there's he's doing a science experiment on a nanite, some like really small like microscopic robots, and they're supposed to be very simple ones, but then they evolve and become like a legit life form, as it were, like sentient beings or something. And then there's this evil doctor from the TV show Scrubs, who is yeah, he's there to study some neutron star eruption that happens every 100 years or whatever the time frame is. And then he, of course, tries to kill them, or he actually kills a bunch of them, of the nanites, and then the nanites try to kill him. And I think he survives in the end, though. But it's it's an okay episode. Of course, you can blame Wesley for the thing, like the whole dilemma wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Wesley. Of course, he creates new life. He's like a god, if you put it that way, which is depressing to think about. But like, it's not a good start for a season. It's not that exciting. Like the same goes for season two. Like I think if you start a new season, you should go out with a bang, or something like that. But it's like a very like basic Star Trek episode. Yeah, it has morality issues and weird uh, mystery to solve, because of course first they don't know what's going wrong with the Enterprise and stuff, and then they find out it's the nanites, and then they figure out they're actually sentient and stuff like that. But yeah, I forgot to say this in the beginning. I do think season three is one of the worst seasons of Next Generation. So it's the I think it's worse than seasons one or two. uh, well, I'm not gonna say like what the contender is until we get to the season. Like I can't say for sure which is worse, is it three or the other season. But like there are a few really great episodes in season three, but this isn't one of them. It's it's average, but like not exciting as the first episode. Then there's Ensigns of Command, or Ensigns of Command. So this is, I think it's an interesting episode, not that great. Like one thing I really like about it is that it has the Shellyak. Um, yeah, these creatures. They look like floating trash bags, but like and they're very like meticulous about the legal stuff, and it's just I don't think there's any other Star Trek episode in any of the Star Trek series that deals with them, unless I have no idea about these Discovery and new shows. I don't consider them Star Trek. Um, but anyway, I do like the Shellyak race, because it feels truly alien, and that's one of the problems with Star Trek itself, because because you boldly go where no one has gone before and all that stuff. But like then then the things that used to be alien to you, they're no longer alien, so they're not longer weird. But Sheliak still retains some mystery. But anyway, there's some planet um, in the like a zone in an area where the Sheliak is like basically part of their territory, but it was uninhabited, except that there was some um, colony ship that crash landed there years ago, and now there's like 15,000 human colonists there, and the Sheliak want to colonize the planet themselves. So they say like they have to get the humans out of there in like 3 days or whatever the same time frame is, and the Enterprise says like no, we can't do that. We need more time, and the Sheliak say, well, then we're just gonna eradicate them, and that's of course bad thing. And also like the planet's atmosphere has some, I don't know, nasty poison gas or whatever the scientific explanation is, but something that the locals, they've gotten used to it, but it's lethal to everybody else aboard the Enterprise except Data, because Data is an android, and then he has to negotiate, convince the colonists to abandon their colony. And of course they don't want to do so, because they worked hard to build a proper settlement there and all that. And there's like is an okay idea, but there's this one chick. Do we have a picture of her? Like most people don't really trust Data or like him or anything, and yeah, they even attack him with this electric stuff at some point. But yeah, Data manages to convince them. But there's like one ally that he gets is some young woman who is basically trusts him immediately, and she says something really stupid, like very boomerish, that like machines don't make mistakes. She says something like that, and that sort of, like, I've seen lots of like older sci-fi say stuff like that, and it's like clearly these people who've written these statements, they've never used a computer before. Like if you used Windows, like some very simple things, like you open a program, and 99% of the time, yeah, it works the way it should work, but sometimes it just crashes, like oops, something happened, and then it crashes. So even machines make these mistakes, computers make mistakes. But this is the but anyways, I think the episode is like okay Star Trek episode. It's certainly not bad, and I do like shit the Sheliak, but outside of that is, and of course it's a Data episode that's also good because I like Data, but still it's not nothing too exciting, I guess I would say about it, except the Sheliak. But the Sheliak are they're basically just the excuse, like the reason why Data has to beam down to the planet. But anyways, let's go to the survivors. So yeah, there's a planet with like there was a colony there, and but then it was attacked by some alien ship, and everything's destroyed except one house, and it has two people. These two old people, like the Uxbridge family. The was this Kevin and Rishon Uxbridge, and then and the guy Kevin says like, yeah, we're fine, just go away, and we don't need your help, even though like the Enterprise of course is worried about them, like if they're everybody else has died, why have they been spared, and what if the bad guys come back, all that stuff. But they just want to be left alone, they want to grill in peace. Yeah, Rana 4 is the colony. But anyway, then the alien ship comes back at some point just to sort of scare them, but doesn't really attack and stuff. And anyway, they figure out the appearance of the ship has something to do with Kevin Uxbridge, and eventually they find out that Kevin Uxbridge is not actually human, or rather he's a Dowd, which is some really um, like a advanced life form, sort of like Q, like a, B level Q or something that has superpowers basically, and yeah, because yeah, when the aliens attacked the Hushnocks, I think that they're called, and he was a pacifist, and he wouldn't uh, do anything to protect the colonists because he was a pacifist, which goes to show that pacifism is dumb. But then in the attack, yeah, the Hushnok, however you're supposed to say it. So yeah, so also his wife dies. Rishon, she also dies, and then he used his powers to recreate the house and her, and then he also, in anger, he wipes out the entire race of the Hasnoks. So, so I guess he cannot manipulate time. Like if he had that power, he could just go back in time and prevent the attack before it happened. But then, now that I think of it, it's a bit silly, like the whole story, because it's like if he's super powerful, can't he just prevent the attack without killing anybody or without harming anybody? Like surely he can, just, I don't know, beam away the invasion, the attacking ship, or I don't know, like put a force field around the planet or something like that. Is that against his principles? But only when he realizes his whole pacifist ideology is retarded, then he actually basically takes revenge on the race, and then just larps that his wife is still alive and stuff. But it's an okay episode, but not it's. I guess it's like I'd like to know more about the DAO. Like, how are they different from the Q? Because there is a sort of similar Q episode later on with similar kind of scenario that a Q. Not in this season, but like Q wanted to live as a human, and then he was killed and whatever. Um, but yeah, anyway, of course they Picard and Pals, they figure out that well he that Kevin Uxbridge has something to do with the ship, because the ship that comes to threaten them later on is also like creation of Kevin. But like yeah, it's like how does he do? Like what are the limits of his power? Like except apparently time travel aren't included. It's interesting idea, but now it creates a lot of questions. Then I think about it, and instead the wrong kind of questions. But let's move on to the next episode. So this is Who Watches the Watchers? And this is an episode that actually, rewatching it, I was expecting it, because when I saw it before, I liked it. But now, actually, I found it to be a bad episode, one of the worst in the whole season. But okay, let's go to the story first, how it works. So yeah, there's some planet Mintaka 3, I believe, and yeah, and there's a Federation observation outpost, because there are these proto Vulcan humanoids, so basically like Stone Age, or no, not Stone Age, like Bronze Age or something. I guess they're basically Bronze Age. Yeah, it says it here. Okay, they are in Bronze Age level, and they're studying it, but something goes wrong with the cloak, with the holographic wall on their observation post, and I think like one of the scientists dies, one is lost or something, and then the Enterprise comes to save the day. Uh, but but yes, then a couple of locals, this guy and his daughter, they happen to see into the outpost, and this guy gets injured, and he's dead, dies or almost close to death, and then he gets beamed up by the Enterprise, and Dr. Crusher revives him, and then he saws Crusher talking to Picard, and he thinks Picard is a god, and then basically, and then later on, um, Troy and Riker, they had to go in disguise, beam down to the planet to try to like I guess find out, like find where the survivors of the expedition are, or one of them or whatever. But the dilemma is of course that because like what why I don't like this episode anymore is basically that first of all this is a Bronze Age society, but they are already like they evolved quote unquote into atheists because they say that like, oh, we no longer believe in God or any of these tales and stuff, and it just doesn't make sense. Like okay, they're Vulcans, they're more intelligent, but like hey, even Vulcans are they're inherently more emotional, more volatile emotionally than human beings. The reason they have their logic thing is because they've learned, they created their philosophy is the way of Kolinar to keep their emotions in check. The reason humans don't have this excess obsession with logic because humans aren't emotionally as fucked up as Vulcans. So, and if these are proto Vulcans, just like or despite them being proto Vulcan, it's still, especially Vulcans do have their religious rituals and stuff. So it doesn't make sense that they somehow ascended to the federal status. But of course, now with Picard and the Enterprise, and then they start believing in the Picard and gods and stuff, and so well, that's not so like that's not a bad story angle or anything that they think that Picard is God, but or the Enterprise or anything like that. But it's just like I didn't buy it that they're supposed to be some sort of atheist that already quote unquote overcame religion. And another thing is that it's written really badly. Like there's lots of many times the dialogue is very like direct about like oh you're a god and let's see, do we have any quotes down here? Because now I don't really like remember the quotation exactly, but it's just like it's too on the nose, like treating the audience like they're retarded, basically. Like we're talking about this, like we shouldn't make them think I'm a god, and yeah, I know I don't remember I should have checked some like. Well, yeah, like this is a good example. Are you sure this is what he wants? That's a problem with believing in a supreme being trying to determine what he wants. So yeah, it's because one of the local guys who saw Picard, who was beamed up, he says like because they figure out that Riker or I guess or is it Riker or Troy or both of them they capture, they figure out he's outsider or something, and then they think that the Picard wants them to kill Riker or something, and Troy says like, well, there's the problem with believing in a supreme being, trying to determine what he wants. So, like, yeah, sure, I do agree, it's true, but it doesn't mean that you should stop. That doesn't logically imply that it's inherently bad believing in a supreme being. Yeah, and if you believe that I am a supreme being, you cannot hurt me. If, however, I am telling the truth that I am mortal, you will kill me. If, however, my death is the only evidence you will believe, then shoot. Like, okay, this isn't by itself, it's not bad, but like I think there are lots of like it's fine to have especially a TV series sort of to cut corners and not be too subtle. Like some lines you can just sort of say out blatantly, but I think this episode had just too many of these. So yeah, I thought it was a bad episode, and I was disappointed because my memories of the episode was that it was good. And then we have another bad episode, and this is just yeah. I try not to waste too much time with it because this is so there's some lieutenant whatever, what's her name, who is Worf's subordinate, and she dies in an away team mission, and then she has a kid, and whose dad already has died. So then the kid becomes an orphan, and then they wonder what can we do with the kid. And oh yeah, there is also at some point some weird entity from the planet below, comes to the kid's room and to in the form of his dead mother and trying to take care of him. And that's also a bit weird. Like it doesn't really. I don't think it's really explained. Like what is that entity, anyways? But like the worst thing about it is that how the episode ends. And first of all, like yeah, this kid is really a bad actor. Like most child actors, like don't make child centric episodes, especially if the child cannot act. But yeah, so the worst bit about this episode is Roostai. So because they're trying to figure out what should we do with the kid, like send it out of the airlock, sell him to slavery, or adopt him, or what. But then Worf decides that he's gonna perform Roostai ritual with Jeremy, so the kid, a ceremony that would make him a member of Worf's house. So yeah, he becomes a member of Worf's house, but you know what the fucking problem is? We never hear about this Jeremy ever again in all of Next Generation, and I would say it probably applies to Deep Space Nine as well. Like if they're willing to go through with this, like make him part of Worf's house, shouldn't they, um, you know, at least mention him, show him in a few episodes later on, but I don't think they ever mention him ever again. They sort of forget us. Like this episode was embarrassing. Let's just instead of trying to I don't know make this storyline may be more interesting, but they're just gonna forget all about it. So yeah, I wasted too much time on the episode because it's bad. And another bit disappointing episode is Booby Trap. So it starts off really interesting. While investigating a 1,000-year-old alien derelict, the Enterprise gets caught in the same energy trap which doomed that vessel a millennium ago. So yeah, there's a asteroid field and there's some 1,000-year-old spaceship there. And of course, like I was like, oh, I didn't remember this is like a archaeology episode, and Picard gets to do some of his archaeology stuff. But nope, we don't really get any of this because it's just about like Enterprise is stuck in the booby trap, and then Geordi has to do some technobabble bullshit to get them out of the predicament. And it's like I don't dislike Geordi. I think Jordy is a good supporting character, but like in this episode, he's sort of the uh, main character of the protagonist. Is like, no, I don't really care that much about Jordy, and especially it's about Jordy's romance because there's like the holographic regeneration or recreation, sorry, recreation of Dr. Brahms, and she was like one of the scientists who built the Enterprise back in Utopia Planitia shipyards, fleet yards. It says here. Oh, sorry. So, anyways, so he's first. Jordy looks into her notes, trying to figure out something about the engines, how to fix them and stuff. But then he, sort of accidentally activates a holographic recreation of her, and then inputs like her personality subroutines into it, so it's acts sort of like a real person. And then of course he develops feelings for her, and it's just like I really don't want to be subjected to like entire episodes about Jodie LaForge's relationship dramas. It's like if it's like a sort of like a small side story in an episode, that's fine. But it's like no, I would, yeah, I would have much rather just have a Picard archaeology episode, but no. So yeah, that I didn't like the episode. But now we are starting to get into bit better episodes. The Enemy, because it has Romulans. So yeah, it has Jordy, but I think it's a better Jordy episode. So uh, Jordy LaForge and a Romulan are trapped on a planet. So there's a yeah, Galandon core in the neutral zone or something, and uh, a Romulan scout ship had crash landed there, and the Enterprise goes to help them, but because of electromagnetic storms, um, Geordi and the Romulan, they have to sort of help each other to survive. Like, of course, the Romulan is not very accommodating at first, but later on he sort of realizes, and there's another. Okay, so yeah, but they beamed up another Romulan who is dying of some illness there, and his name is Patak. Patak is like depending on the pronunciation and but Patak is like a Klingon insult. You Patak. So I guess that's a good name for a Romulan. But anyway, he's dying, and yeah, he needs a ribosome infusion, and Worf is the only compatible one on aboard the Enterprise, and he refuses to do it. So I guess that's sort of interesting because usually in Star Trek you think that, or most TV series, like even because Worf of course refuses because he's a Klingon, and the guy is a Romulan, and they hate each other. But like, so yeah, in most TV series, like in the end, they would like have a change of heart and okay, I will help them. But no, actually, the Romulan just dies, and then like a Romulan warbird arrives, I think, and they like, oh, they blame the Enterprise for the dead Romulans and stuff, and there's almost a conflict. But then when the Romulan from the planet with short there beamed up, then there's, okay, we don't have to fight. We can be friends or something, like, at least for 5 seconds. But, it's an okay episode. I guess it's a bit cliche, that storyline about. Well, I guess both storylines are a bit cliche, but I like that kind of like the, sort of enemies have to work together to survive. I think that's a good cliche, generally speaking, but like, the Worf giving his ribosome infusion stuff, that's a bit cliche. And I think that also sets the tone for many season 3 episodes. Like they have fairly superficial kind of moral dilemmas, but we will see more episodes like that soon. The price, well, this is sort of an interesting episode, but it um, difficult to do, like put into words my feelings. But anyway, let's just, so there's this weird alien race that looks stupid, like they're larpers trying to be lions or something, the Barzans. Do we have a good picture? Well, here, yeah, these, they look retarded. Well, you can't really see, she has some stupid thing over her mouth. But anyway, so they have discovered a wormhole that goes far away from, to the other quadrants in the galaxy. And they're trying to, they're like a minor race, so they can't really utilize it well. So they're willing to sell it to other more powerful races. And then, of course, one of them is the Federation. Well, it's not a race, but whatever. And then there's some few other races nobody's ever heard of or won't hear again. So like some Chrysalians, Caledonians, and also there's a couple of Ferengi who weren't invited, but they demand to be able to participate in this stuff. But anyway, so then the spokesperson. So yeah, Mendoza is the Federation spokesperson, but he gets murdered at some point. And Devinon Iral is human, but he's Crusalian, ambassador or whatever, even though he's like part betazoid and is partially empathic, and he uses it to help him in negotiations, and he has a really uh, fiery fling with Diana Troy. This is like more romance stuff. It's like, wormholes are cool, but like, and there is some scheming and stuff, but I think the episode should have focused more on the scheming and less on the romance stuff. Um, but like anyway, in the end, like thanks to Devinoni's scheming, he schemes with the Ferengi because the Ferengi cause trouble, and they manage to like he manages to make the deal with the Barsans that the Chrysalians gain access to the wormhole, but unfortunately, they found out that it's not a stable wormhole, that the other end of the wormhole seems to be random. It always goes to a different place, so it's not really usable. But yeah, anyway, when they go investigate, like Data and Jordy go with the shuttlecraft, and the Ferengi go with the shuttlecraft, and they are left behind in the Delta Quadrant. And if I remember correctly, they're actually we see them later in a Star Trek Voyager episode that they sort of become gods on some alien planet. And greed is eternal, so that's sort of cool. Uh, yeah, Aridor and Coal Burner. So it's an okay episode, but I think it could have been done better because wormholes are cool, and I guess sort of this trade negotiation might be cool too. But I don't know, less about Diana Troy's emotions and more about politics and scheming and stuff. Like there was that, but I guess because most of the other races weren't really interesting either. Like there's Devinon Iral and the Ferengi and the Federation and yeah, Leor, this guy I didn't even remember he was there. Caledonians, so they're Scottish, right? That's how the native Scotsmen look like. The Picts. It's not a lore you don't often hear. But it's an okay episode. I guess I have to give it that. Then let's go to Vengeance Factor. This is also an okay episode, and it sort of feels like an episode from the first season for some reason. I think that's sort of a good thing. So anyway, there's this some planets, and there's the more like organized, civilized society there, and then there's the gatherers that are sort of like I don't know, Mad Max people in space that dress like rock musicians from the 80s. So they are sort of I don't know, nice contrast to most of the uptight and boring people you see in Star Trek, like these um, gatherers. I mean, like here you can see one. Yeah, puts his feet up on the table and stuff. And this guy, yeah. So I sort of like the gatherers, and then there's this weird Maruk is the leader of the planet, whatever, the civilized people, and it's like I guess she's female, but it's not clear. But of course, so so basically the civilized people. What are they called? I don't remember the planet's name or anything. See, even the episode Acamarians, yeah, Acamarians. Okay, so the Acamarians, because like the gatherers, I think they're part of the same race or the same people. But I guess they need the gatherers, I don't know, to increase their gene pool or whatever for other reason. So they want to have peace negotiations with the gatherers who play Magic the Gathering. Of course, that's what they call that. But then there's Yuta, this young female who is the assistant of Maruk, uh, this woman, and she's not just Riker has brief romance with her, but she's actually the last member of her clan, and she's like 200 years old or something, or was it 100 years old? Because they spent all their resources to make her be able to transmit some virus. Because like back in the old days in Acameria, there used to be some clone wars. No, not clone, clan wars, clan KKK wars, and so some other clans wiped out her clan, and she's the last of her clan. And then she has some virus that she wants to transmit to simply by touching the other members of the enemy clan. So she kills this old guy who's the last member of his clan, and then she tries to kill uh, this guy who's the boss of the gatherers. Is it Chorgan? I guess I don't remember his name. But they save him and yeah, shoot her and stuff. Yeah, right. Of course, Riker has to shoot her to make it especially emotionally grueling. So it's nothing great, but it's an okay episode, sort of entertaining. Yeah, and here we have the Defector. So another Romulan episode. So that's not can't be too bad. And it's sort of interesting episode. So yeah, this guy Romulan, he defects from from the Romulan fleet to the Federation side, and he's warning them about some upcoming Romulan invasion. And he still like says he's patriotic Romulan, but he doesn't want to you know see the Romulan Empire be plunged into war because it would be catastrophic. So he thinks it's better to alert the Federation to stop the war before it starts or something. So first he says he's some low-ranking logistics officer, but then they found out he's actually some admiral. Um, but in the end, he figures out that no, actually there is no like, and he was also like 5 months away from retirement or something like that. But then the yeah, Admiral Alidar Jarok, so anyway, but in the end they figure out that actually the invasion was fake, even though he's like the admiral saw like bunch of different kinds of communiques in the military and stuff like that, that clearly shows that they were planning some sort of invasion. But it was just to test his loyalties, because they were um, the higher ups, they were questioning his motives, and I guess they were correct, because he wasn't reliable and he had to leak their enemy some information. So yeah, then he regrets, oh my god, I shouldn't, if I've done nothing, everything would have been better. But yeah, I guess it's a decent episode, and okay, I guess he killed himself in the end. Yeah, the defector. Okay, then there's the hunted. Well, this is just basically Rambo in space. I sort of like the episode though. So yeah, because there's some planet. What is Tarsian, Angosian? Yeah. So yeah, there was some war between, I don't know, Angosian, is it Tarsian? Yeah, Angosians and somebody else. But anyway, so and they made a bunch of like super soldiers basically, who were physically and mentally and in every way like superior killing machines and stuff. But after the war ended, then they weren't sure what to do with their super soldiers, and then they basically put them in prison. And then this guy Roga Danar, he broke out from the prison, and of course at first you know yeah, the Angosians, so yeah, they were being considered to join the Federation. So yeah, at first when the Rogadainar he escapes from jail, the crew of the Enterprise tries to apprehend him, but he's Rogadiner is really smart and good at all sorts of stuff, so it's really difficult. And but I think they finally managed to do it. But then they sort of find out what the reason he was in jail, that he hadn't even committed any crime or anything. It's just basically because he's a super soldier. So in the end, they sort of help him or allow him to break out other super soldiers from the prison, and they take hold of the government of Angosha, or like hold the government hostage, sort of forcing them to negotiate and giving them basic human rights and stuff. So yeah, it's it's just Rambo basically. Like, even though like Rambo doesn't have such a diplomatic ending, I guess, but it's a decent episode. Not great, but decent. And there's high ground, so yeah, there's some planet. I guess a planet called Northern Ireland that the Enterprise is delivering some medical supplies there, but then some terrorists attack and take Dr. Crusher as hostage, and then they uh, well they the terrorists, because they're mad that the Federation is colluding with their enemy, with the government of Northern Ireland, and they actually want to blow up the Enterprise and stuff to drag Federation deeper into this conflict and all that stuff. But surprise, surprise, they don't manage to blow up the Enterprise. That was a big spoiler, I'm sure. But they have some sort of like a super teleporter, subspace teleporter, whatever. That's much more difficult to spot and stuff than for normal teleporters, but it's causes them to get sick and stuff. And we sort of see both sides of the argument, like the boss of the terrorists talking with Crusher, and about like why they fight against the establishment, and then there's like this female cop who talks with Riker, why why she fights against the terrorist, and how it's good in that way that it doesn't try to it's really shows that both sides are equally bad or something. But it's also a bit like especially watching this episode, and also the previous Rambo episode, made me feel like almost they took like some book, because back in the day they didn't have internet, like some political book, like basic political conflicts, and then it's like, okay, or moral issues, moral dilemmas people have to face with, and it's like, okay, yes, issue of terrorism and stuff, like you can make an argument pro and for and against that stuff. And then they sort of wrote an episode around these concepts. So it's a bit, that sort of sacrifices the characters or like the story to tell, to trying to make a statement. So it's sort of like, you know because nowadays there's the argument, like the left says that the art is always political, and the right says no, it's not, or something. But it's like, even before wokeness and stuff, like, this is political, even though it's not. I don't think it's trying to argue any particular. It's not necessarily. Well, there's a Finn, sounds very Irish, but anyways. So it is sort of yeah, it's not promoting a certain message blatantly, but certainly, like, it is political episode. You can say that it's like political morality issues and crap like that. It's like an okay episode, but I guess could have been more subtle, more more science fiction, and not so not so statements. The okay, and then we have Deja Q. So this is the episode where Q gets punished and he's turned into a human and thrown on the Enterprise naked, and it's a fun concept. And then there's also some planet that the moon is going haywire, and the Enterprise is trying to put it back in its orbit so it doesn't destroy everything. And then at some point there's some alien race, the Calamarain. 1, 2, 3, count to three, Calamarain. Sounds a bit like that Deep Space Nine episode. Move along. That's a different story. But so yeah, the Calamarain. So Q used to torment them in the past. They wanna kill Q, but then Q sacrifices himself in the end, and then he's allowed back into the continuum. And also he allows Data to laugh because Data was helping him a lot and stuff. So like it's an okay episode, but I think the problem, like Q is an interesting character and concept, but like I think most of the episodes they never really make the best out of him. It's like I understand like is when you try to write basically God, like what could God do, and it's like the possibilities are literally endless. And of course, it's a TV show with a very limited budget that's gonna limit it. So that's you know I can forgive a lot because of that. And this episode is okay, but it's like it's just always like with the Q episodes, like there's it couldn't be more. That's my feeling usually on them. But it's decent episode. And then we have a matter of perspiration, no perspective, matter of perspective. Um, so yeah, so Riker was on some space station and they was doing some sort of experiment. This scientist guy, was he in Oz? Wasn't he like some mafia guy in Oz? Anyways, so when he beams away from the space station, it blows up, and then he's charged with murder. And they use holographic recreations to try to, like animate the crime scenes, and like the different survivors um, tell their side of the story. So there's Riker and the scientist's wife, and then there's some like science assistant woman, and everybody is sort of like Rashomon, like Akira Kurosawa's movie and stuff. It's an okay story, but it's a there's a few minor details that keep nagging at me. For one, because like the authorities of the planet, whatever with Tanuga, I guess Tanuga is the planet. So yeah, this guy, like because according to the data they have available, or the telemetry, is that there's some sort of energy being emanating from Riker just before he beamed away from the station to the Enterprise, and then the station blew up. So they say that he, claimed that he fired a phaser at some, machine there that caused the cascade reaction or whatever. But of course, like when he arrives on the Enterprise, he's not holding a phaser. That should have been a dead giveaway that that's not what happened. Like they should have noticed that he was holding a phaser and he was in a position to fire it or something. If that was the thing, or they should have. Of course, they could have said that he dropped it. That would have made sense if they claimed that okay, he fired the phaser and then he dropped it. But would he have the time? So yeah, that's really glaring flaw in the whole accusation. Another thing is like the different stories. It doesn't really make sense, and I sort of had a similar kind of issue with Rashomon back in the day when I saw it, because the different perspectives, like Riker claims that the scientist's wife was coming onto him, and then And when the scientist sort of noticed it, he tried to hit Riker, and I think Riker dodged, and this guy fell on his ass. But uh, then the wife claims that Riker tried to rape her or something and stuff. It's like, okay, which one is like, is the is the truth somewhere in the middle? Like, Riker tried to rape her a little bit, or is it like, is it Riker's account completely right or what? It's like things like that. It's like, okay, why is it so? And also like the fight, like yeah, I think according to the wife, Riker hit the scientist, whereas according to Riker, he just dodged the scientist's hit. And like the discrepancies, they're a bit too like this should be more subtle, I guess, like differences between the different stories. But it's a cool concept, but I think the execution has some flaws in it. I guess that's my take on it. But here then we get to yesterday's Enterprise, and this is a great episode. Even though, like, yeah, so far there have been some decent episodes, but many not so good episodes. But this is actually a great episode. So even though I think season 3 is not very good, but there are some great episodes. So this is so yeah, while investigating a temporal rift, the Enterprise encounters ghosts from its own past. The USS Enterprise C. So there's Enterprise from like 100 years from the past or something, and they figure out, and then it alters the timeline that the Enterprise is suddenly at war with the Klingons, and they are also losing the war. And worst of all, Tasha Yar is alive because she, of course, died already in the first season, but in this episode she's alive. And the only one to yeah, here's Tasha Yar. The only one to notice anything's wrong is Guinan because she's El Orion Aryan, and she has weird abilities. I guess she notices that it's wrong that the Enterprise C should not be there. Yeah, Guinan, Whoopi Goldberg. So yeah, the way to fix it is, of course, to send the Enterprise C back in time, because like according to the normal timeline is that the Enterprise C and its crew it was destroyed and everybody was killed trying to what's the word, protect a Klingon outpost from a Romulan attack, and that of course made the Klingons trust the Federation. It's like, oh, you are honorable, you have honor. So then that would prevent the war from happening between the Klingons and the Federation. But now that I think of it, it doesn't seem realistic that Federation would be losing to the Klingons. But like because Klingons, like even though they're a warrior culture, they're not really that good at it. Like they're cool, like sort of like Japanese or something. They have cool warrior. I used to have cool warrior culture and good food, but are they really that good at fighting? I don't think so. Uh, but yeah, anyway, so then they, somehow send Enterprise C back in time and fix the timeline. Of course, Tasha Yar also goes back, and yeah, it's a good episode. It's good atmosphere, nice to see Tasha Yar, stuff like that. Time travel done well. That's also good. Like you know, badly done time travel. I think there should be some international laws preventing badly done time travel plots in whether it's games or movies and stuff. But this is a well done one and a good episode, great episode. And then it's the Offspring. Well, that's the best. Well, one of the best Star Trek episodes ever. of any show in my very humble opinion. So this is where Data creates a daughter for him, Lal. Well, he creates this. It's also very progressive because he creates an android and lets the child choose its own race and gender. But of course, and then there's many funny scenes with Lal. So yeah, this is how Lal originally looks before she chooses to look like a human female like this. And of course, I think the actress does a great job with the stuff. And also, so yeah, the of course the assholes at Starfleet. This guy, he wants to um, make sure that the Lal gets proper education. Instead of having her dad educate her, it's like, yeah, he's gonna be the scientist poking her at the laboratories. That's gonna do the thing. And of course, and but then it's also that Lal, she develops emotions, which is something Data cannot do and stuff, and she gets scared over the bad guys from the Federation and or the Starfleet. And then she dies because her sub positronic brain wasn't stable enough or something like that. And yeah, she also uses verbal contractions, saying "I" instead of "I have," which officially Data cannot do. Even though there are a few episodes where he says it, but I guess that's just mistake. It's a TV show; it's not intentional. Uh, but yeah, I think it's yeah. And I was also this scene is also great because like Riker has been away, and then he sees a new bartender. It's like, who's this? And then Lal has been looking at young couple kissing in the bar and stuff, and then she kisses Riker just because she wants to try it, and then it's like Data comes in and says, well, what are your intentions towards my daughter? It's like, what the fuck is going on? I think that's genuinely hilarious. But it is also very, actually emotionally well done episode and stuff, and you know, I guess like it would have been fun if it wasn't only one episode that Lal had survived, and she would have been more recurring character. Maybe she would have gotten old. I don't know, but that's one of the things with Star Trek or many shows like this that there's many things that you'd like to see more of it, but it's just like, yeah, it's a TV show. Yeah, they cannot go on all sorts of weird tangents. But yeah, this is like no doubt one of the best Next Generation episodes ever, or any Star Trek episodes ever. Yeah, then it's the scenes of the father is Klingon stuff. So yeah, his dad, who was killed when he was kid, he was killed in the Kitamar outpost, and the Romulans attacked, and then like they found out there was somebody was sending some secret codes to the shields of the outpost or something to the Romulans, and then his dad Moog is framed to be the one who did it, but of course he was framed for it. And there's also a Klingon commander Kern comes aboard the ship as a exchange officer, but then it's revealed that he's actually Worf's brother, younger brother Kern, and he's played by Tony Todd, which is great. I think Tony Todd is always he's a good actor. And but yeah, in the end, it also introduces Duras, the Duras family, right? Yeah. So yeah, Duras is like some guy who is really powerful in the Klingon High Council, and he's the one who is framing Worf's dad for the treason, but it's actually was his father who the uh, betrayed the Klingons to the Romulans, and but then it's revealed that even the Chancellor Compek, he knows about it, that it's fake, because Worf challenges their decision, but the High Council and the counselors and stuff, they are not willing to tell the truth. They are dishonorably framing an innocent man because the Duras family is too powerful and stuff. And then Worf um, accepts the this commendation. Oh yeah, and Picard is his Chadich, sort of his assistant, and does some skulking around and gets attacked and whatever. But I guess it's a okay episode, like atmospheric, sort of silly maybe at times, but these Klingon episodes, they usually have a similar kind of feeling, and it's sort of comfy, maybe a bit silly, like at lots of ambience, not that much substance maybe. And then we have Allegiance. So Picard is abducted, and then there's three other people he doesn't know. So there's this guy, a Mizarian, who is from some, cowardly pacifist race. His planet has been conquered by other races like 6 trillion times because they don't fight. And there's a Bolian woman. Yeah, even though like it's a Bolian with hair, but I guess she's probably the first Bolian ever shown in Star Trek. So they hadn't decided they were always blind, blind or bald. And she's a cadet, Starfleet cadet. And then there's yeah, Kovathol is no, that's this guy, but what's this? Esog is a Chalnoth, and they are sort of tough warrior kind of guys. So these four, they're stuck in some room and they're trying to figure out how to get out. And of course, the Mizarian is just doesn't want to, because when Picard tries to hack the door to lockpick it basically, and he's just being a coward and stuff. But Chalna is sort of, he's a cool guy. But anyway, it's found out that the Bolian woman, she's actually working with the the kidnappers basically, or she's one of them, and it's some sort of test. Oh yeah, and while all that is happening, there's a fake Picard on the Enterprise doing all sorts of weird stuff. So like this, he goes to 10 forward the bar, and he starts singing some come cheer up me lads, this wonderful year, blah blah blah. It's that's a great scene, just so it exists, because that's something Picard wouldn't normally do. But it's like, why does he do? Because it's of course revealed in the end that there are these Lethians, I think that's these aliens, who are trying to, they're basically studying other races, their how they act, how they think and stuff. So they abduct them and try to study them, sort of like treat them as lab rats. So it's sort of questionable, like why would they do a sing along? Like how do they know about the sing along? Did they found it in the ship's archives, or did they probe somebody's mind to find out what the song is and stuff? Uh, is it what's the alien race called? Is it Lethian or is it some other? Maybe it was some deep space. No, it's not Lethia. Whatever. There's some alien race. So I guess the episodes, I sort of like the scenario of Picard has to work with strangers to figure out their situation, the mystery. I like that aspect of it. There's a traitor, sort of social deduction stuff. You know, sus among us kind of crap. It's fun, but it is a bit the motivations of the aliens. They're a bit questionable, I guess. Like doesn't make sense so much. Okay, but then we have Captain's Holiday. This is a fun episode. So Picard is forced to go on a vacation to Risa, the holiday planet with lots of degeneracy, and there's Horgan, the some sort of sex totem thingy, and Jamarahon are introduced for the first time because Risa is visited a few times in later Star Trek series and mentioned many times as well. But yeah, this is sort of like a Indiana Jones kind of episode because there's some weird Ferengi guy, and then there's Wash, this woman who because they're hunting for the legendary item Tox Uthat, which is supposedly um, some artifact from the future that can cause a like a supernova, so to basically blow up a star. Oh yeah, so basically do what Sam Carter does in Star Trek, not Star Trek, Stargate SG-1, because they're so proud about that on the show. But anyway, so yeah, so it's trying to, and of course Wash is very no untrustworthy kind of woman, but they have sort of romance, Picard and her. And then there's the Sas Ferengi, and then there's also some these Vorgonians, whatever they are from the future, who are also looking for the Tox Uthat. I'm not quite sure, like in the end, like because they say they are security guys, but it's like I'm not sure are they actually security guys or because at the end they sort of want to steal it, but Picard destroys the Tox Uthat, and they say like the timeline has been maintained. Yeah, Boratus, like the Vorgon. So are they actually like just the future cops, or are they just pretending to be future cops? Maybe it's obvious and I'm just dumb, but like, but yeah, it's a fun episode. I guess the biggest problem is it that it's in a TV show. Like, I think an episode like this to be, you know, truly what it deserves to be, it would need a bigger budget to have a bit more stuff happening and stuff like the tension and the story and the mystery unfolding in a certain way and have more sets and locations and stuff. But yeah, it's a fun episode and it's nice to see. I guess nice to see different kinds of sets than you usually see in Star Trek, and Picard doing archaeology stuff and stuff he doesn't usually do, like taking a holiday. Okay, but then we have Tin Man. So yeah, there's this organic ship, this ancient organic ship. There used to be a fleet, but now it's the last of his kind, and then there's this super empath Tam Elbran, who's he's betazoid, but like his telepathic abilities are much stronger than most um, empaths because he cannot really control them. Like if he's aboard the Enterprise, he can read the mind of everybody, and it's very confusing and painful for him. And of course, he likes Data because he cannot read Data's mind because he's a robot. He's not a real human being or real. See, this proves that Data doesn't have a soul. He's just a robot, even though he's a really cool robot. Uh, but anyways, so Tam Elbran is brought here to communicate with Gom 2 or Tin Man as he's called for some reason. Doesn't really make sense because he's not made of tin, he's organic. And of course, Romulans want it for themselves as well, and they sort of race to get it. But in the end, Tam Elbran beams onto the ship, and instead of he, he's gonna says, "Hey, I'm gonna stay here." There's gonna be because also the ship Gom 2 wanted to commit suicide because it was so fucking lonely. But now he has a friend who actually understands him. So Sam Elbrand and Dom to go to do more adventures. And this is one of these episodes really like to see like a follow up, like what happens to both of these guys, the ship and the guy, because it's an interesting concept, cool concept. Um, and I guess I'd like to see it developed more. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have much else to say. Yeah, very cool concept. Okay, Hollow Pursuits. This is the introduction to Broccoli or Lieutenant Barkley. So he's sort of autistic. Yeah, here he's autistic engineer guy who's he's pretty good at engineering stuff, but he's socially very awkward, and he retreats to the holodeck to have his fantasies. So he has imaginary relationships with Diana Troy, and beats up other his superior officers on the holodeck and stuff like that. But yeah, then there's some sort of engineering problem and stuff, and he helps solve it. I don't even remember what the problem is, but like broccoli, I like broccoli and Barkley, the character. But there's like one problem always, like when so like okay, when starting to watch a Barkley episode, because he is socially awkward, that there's gonna be a bit of hemming and hawing, like instead of like okay, there's a problem, let's see how to solve the problem, instead of like he's doing his angsty emo stuff, like oh, what can I do, it's like come on, get on with it. That's a bit of, but it is nice to see Barkley overcome his problems and all that, and being useful guy and whatever. So yeah, there were some medical containers with something. Doesn't matter what the actual problem was with there was. Yeah, it's the first Barkley episode, and I guess it opens the can of worms that if you can have holodeck and you can have all sorts of perverse sexual fantasies there, and like why why don't most people have problems with it, because there's somebody said somewhere on the internet, and I can't help but agree with it, like if something like the holodeck would be invented in real life, it would ruin society altogether, because most people would just be engaging in their base desires basically. Oh, okay, then we have the most toys. So this is one of the most anti-Semitic Next Generation episodes, because there's this collector Kivas Fajo who abducts Data. He frames his death, but instead of beams him out when his shuttle explodes, and because he has all sorts of rare items, and he wants Data to join as his rare item. And the reason why I say it's very anti-Semitic, because well, look at the guy, the actor. I don't remember. I don't know the guy's name, but he is Jewish and looks very Jewish, and in this his character acts very Jewish. Like uh, he's a guy with immoral guy with lots of money and just using to acquire his fancy toys and stuff, like the episode says. And hey, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying it's anti-Semitic. But yeah, so yeah, Data is held in his display room and stuff, and of course he doesn't like it, but he sort of forces Data to cooperate, or he will kill innocent people or something like that. But yeah, in the end, and I think Kivas Facho kills the, like Data sort of tries to win the trust of his young female assistant, but I think he killed the assistant, and then Data especially wants to escape, and he Data gets his hands on the Baron T disruptor, which is a disruptor, laser gun that is much more destructive, and like killing somebody with it hurts much more than with a normal phaser or disruptor, so it's like banned in the Federation. But yeah, when Data is trying to escape, and then the Kivas Facho is, I don't know, was he threatening somebody, or like, yeah, he was yeah, Varia, she's the woman who's killed by Kivas Facho. So he's saying like, oh, you can't shoot me because you have your programming, you're goody two shoes. But actually, Data, decides like, no, actually, I have to kill this guy. He's so evil, and I really like the message. And but unfortunately, just as he's about to fire, the Enterprise had located him, and they're beaming him up. And actually, I didn't remember he was beamed up. I remembered that Data shoots, like Data shot first, and but I didn't remember that this sort of cock ending though. But it is like, yeah, the moral choice is sometimes just to shoot an unarmed man, because he was unarmed, but it's not that his evil is much more than like a general or a president who doesn't pull the trigger himself, but he might cause millions to die by making his order. So this kind of, so yeah, sometimes pulling the trigger is the moral thing to do. And so yeah, otherwise, like, it's a decent episode. Like, it's just the atmosphere, I guess, is not, it's okay, but like, not the best or anything. But like, I guess the message is something I agree with. Okay, then we have Sarek. So Sarek is of course Spock's father, so it's nice to see him. And yeah, he has some diplomatic mission that he has to finish, but like, but lots of people on the Enterprise, they start acting very hostile towards each other, and then it's found out that Sarek has Bendy's syndrome, which is some lethal disease that occasionally or rarely affects old Vulcans, and because they're a telepathic species, so it causes other people, like his emotions, to bleed onto others and causes them to act aggressively and stuff. So yeah, then Picard has to do mind meld with Sarek to give him his own mental composure, and so he can finish the negotiations with whatever race they were supposed to be negotiating. So yeah, it's a decent episode, I guess. Sarek. Yeah. I guess you can say it's a bit, just lots of talking, that kind of episode. So you can like, I guess it's a little bit boring in that sense, but like, but it's it has Sarek, Mark Lenard. He's nice to see, and doing his stuff. Yeah. Okay, then let's go to Menage a Troy. So yeah, Ferengi Diamond kidnaps Riker, Deanna, and Laxana Troy. So this is not a very serious episode, and I don't even remember and don't really care why the Ferengi wanted to kidnap them. Was it to, I guess, to use their telepathic, yeah, Betazoid telepathy. So they want to use their telepathic abilities in negotiations and stuff. Um, but of course, the Ferengi, they're quite dumb. Like when Riker, Troy, and they're in the brig on the Ferengi ship, and then the Ferengi who are supposed to be guarding them, they're playing 3D chess, and then Riker starts to play like through the prison bars, basically saying like, okay, I moved, queen to, night seven, or however that works. And then, but then he sort of coaxes them to open the door so he can show something about the chessboard. And of course, then Riker overpowers them. So it's like, and the Ferengi is much dumber than they have any license to be. So it's another serious episode. It's a bit stupid. And of course, the Ferengi Diamond, he sort of, becomes infatuated with Laxana Troy. Laxana Troy, of course, Troy, Diana's mom. Oh yeah, and it's the first. It also introduces Umox, the Ferengi ear massage. That's the first episode with that. So I don't know if that's a good or bad president. I'm gonna get some water. I'll be right back. Yeah, just here. But like, so not a great episode, but it has some great scenes like this one, when Picard has to convince that he's a very jealous, homicidally jealous ex-boyfriend of Diana. I mean Loxana Troy. So he has to convince the Ferengi of that, and then it's like starts quoting Shakespeare. May I compare thee to a summer's day, and and once one has plucked a flower, its needs must wither. Or however that was. That's a great scene because it's so silly. It's I like it when you get to see, especially serious characters like Picard, do silly stuff like that. Threatening to destroy the crayon is Crayon. Yeah, it's a typo. Oh my god, a typo on a website. Oh my god. But yeah, it's a silly episode. It's for what it is, I guess it's okay. So then transfigurations. Um, so yeah, there's John Doe is some alien from some race that they don't know. He's found injured in some shuttlecraft on some planet, and he's taken to the Enterprise and healed back to health, but he's lost all his memory, so he's just John Doe. Yeah, he has amnesia, and but then he starts gradually transforming into some uh, weird thingy. But then there's like some Zalconian vessel is like comes chasing after him and saying he's some dangerous criminal and they want him back and stuff. But like it's actually some of the some he's basically a dissident from the Zalconian planet, and he's starting to evolve that he can just heal by touching. That's very much like I think the people who wrote Stargate, they because there's the ascended ones, they have very similar kind of stuff, of course. Yeah, so I think they've been inspired by this sort of stuff. But anyway, so yeah, he's evolving into some sort of weird light being, superior thingy, and right now it just looks like some guy in spandex here. But the Zalconian government, they of course they feel threatened by the people who are evolving, and want to arrest him. But then he evolves into a greater being or whatever. I guess suggesting there's going to be a revolution on their planet or something. Because yeah, because the ship that crashed, I think there were others like him who his friends who were evolving, but the others died. But he manages to evolve, so he's going, I guess, back to his own planet to change things. No, it's an okay episode. Yeah, I guess decent. Like when I was younger, I used to like that sort of spiritual evolution stuff much more. But now it's a bit cliche. I guess, like, if you want to discuss spirituality or evolution and that sort of stuff, like, I guess I'd like to see some sort of new, or maybe some more old-fashioned way. I'd say, more like a, historical. How did our ancestors see these ideas? Of course, that's very difficult to do. But okay, the last episode of the season is Best of Both Worlds, the first episode. So that's a two-parter. This is, of course, the Borg episode. The Borg are trying to attack Earth, and the Enterprise has to stop them. And this is, considered a classic. But personally, I've never been that fond of Best of Both Worlds. It's okay, but especially like the first episode, I think it focuses too much on because there's, Shelby, this young commander who's some expert on the Borg, and Riker is, I think Riker is, yeah, he's offered to become the captain of the USS Melbourne, and he's sort of uncertain what to do, if he's gonna do that or not. And then Shelby, whose name is only Shelby, she doesn't have a first name. So I guess she wants to become the first officer of the Enterprise and all that stuff. I think this episode is a bit too much about just like this, career rivalry between them, instead of, the Borg. But yeah, of course, the Borg attack, and they destroy a bunch of vessels. Or is it in the second episode? Maybe I'll just discuss this episode. But yeah, in the end, they abduct Picard and turn him into Locutus of Borg. Resistance is futile. Of course, this is, you know back in the day, in the 90s, that was still very intimidating, like the Borg. The whole idea of, like, yeah, is Borg are so evil. But at least for that's personally, like, because of Star Trek Voyager, because the later seasons, like, the Borg become a joke. Chainwave farts and Borg cubes just blow up. That's basically how Borg are treated in that. So it's like, because at this point, sure, the Borg were really intimidating, a big threat, but they've really been watered down. Like, this is like in the beginning of the stream, I said something about, many of these things are not so alien in Star Trek anymore, because you see more of them, especially the Borg. They're not scary or alien anymore, because they've been both done to death, but also done badly in the Voyager, and maybe some other, well, maybe also First Contact. Even though I think it's an okay movie, but it's stupid movie, but it's okay movie. But I don't want us to discuss the second part of Best of Both Worlds until I do season 4. I guess, like, it's difficult to actually envision for the writers how the Borg should be. Like, the part about the Borg don't see you as a threat unless you provoke them. But, like, yeah, it doesn't really make sense. Like, yeah, it works in the sense that you beam to their huge Borg cube, and then, yeah, they just walk past you without caring. Like, it functions that, yeah, their way of thinking is so alien. It's like, doesn't make sense. But it's like, why wouldn't they see you as a threat? Because you're clearly a, illegal alien on their vessel. Like, of course they should be threatened by them. Oh yeah, and there's this. I'm not sure which it is, but like Sector 001. So it's known as the Salt Sector. Where Earth is. So is it a Borg designation, or is it a Federation designation? Because usually it's mentioned in connection with the Borg. So that's just because it doesn't. It makes zero sense if it's a Borg designation, because of course Borg have been around for centuries before even finding out Earth exists. So I guess it's probably some human designation. But anyways, that's all the episodes of season 3. So yeah, like until we get to the enemy, I think most of the episodes are quite bad. Like okay, ensigns of command and survivors, they're okay, but then like in enemy is okay, and then there's like defector is pretty good and stuff. But of course, there's two. So yeah, there's two episodes here. Yesterday's Enterprise, The Offspring. They are great episodes, and especially The Offspring. I cannot stop gushing. Okay, Captain's Holiday. That's also pretty good. Sarek. I guess it's like it's difficult to get excited about. Okay, it's like political babbling about an old man who is dying. So it's not as exciting as Captain's Holiday about ancient artifacts with superpowers and stuff, or it's not that great. And best of both was, I don't know, maybe I'm somehow heretical, but I'm not saying it's bad or anything, but it's like I just feel like it's overrated, because I get the impression you're supposed to say it's the best Next Generation episodes ever, like both of the best of both worlds episodes. But no, I don't agree. I think they're okay episodes, like average or slightly above average, simply because there's Borg. Borg used to be cool back in the day, but yeah, there's like later on. Yeah, I think later on there aren't really bad episodes, like Menage a Trois. But it's a silly episode. I'm not gonna call it bad. It's just a silly episode. But yeah, once you get to especially Yesterday's Enterprise, then the episodes do get much better. But like the first half of the season, or the first 1/3 of the season, is fairly bad though. But hey, that's the third season of Star Trek The Next Generation, and I'm Adventure Argonaut, and I thank you for watching. Bye bye. And I will do season 4 someday in the future. Not sure yet when.